Started. Okay.
So Sandeep, I'll just brief and then maybe you can start.
Go ahead, please.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our 8th webinar of the TAM R&D webinar series. And the topic for today's webinar is what is new with vSphere 7.0. So most of us have been waiting for 7.0, which actually got GA'd on 2nd April, and it brings a lot of exciting new features along with embedded Kubernetes, which is now built native into vSphere. And a lot of people are saying that this has been by far the biggest innovation after vMotion, DRS in vCenter Server. So today we have Sandeep Reddy, who is the PM for vSphere, product manager for vSphere. He will be presenting the webinar. We also have his colleagues, Nitin Agarwal, Nitin Nagoria, and Kishan, who will be on the call, and they'll also monitor the Q&A window. They're all PMs for vSphere, and Sandeep would cover the features and capabilities which are part of vSphere 7.0, like vCenter server profiles, lifecycle management, federation support, to name a few. So before we start, just want to set some basic ground rules. We are recording this webinar, so do get in touch with your respective TAMs if you want the recording, in case if you have missed it, or if you want to view this again. We'll keep everyone on mute by default. So use the Q&A window at the bottom to put your questions. Myself, Siddharth, and the PMs will be monitoring it. We'll also try and have 10 minutes of Q&A in the end, if the time permits, where you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly to Sandeep. So I would strongly encourage you to ask questions and get all your doubts clarified for this particular release, 7.0. So I think we are good. We can start now, Sandeep. Over to you.
Perfect. Thanks all of you. So for the overwhelming interest, I see it's touching almost 200 participants. That's really encouraging, and I'm really glad that vSphere 7 has generated so much of interest among the VMware community. Okay, so for today's agenda, it's strictly vSphere 7. I'll be covering only the new capabilities which we have introduced as part of vSphere 7.0 release, and this will be very high-level overview. So even with high-level overview, I have about more than 60 slides to cover. So later, in case as part of Q&A or else separately, if you see that, okay, hey, this particular feature or capability is something more important and interesting to me, then feel free to reach out to your TAMs. We'll be happy to arrange some kind of deep dive session for that specific area and for that specific feature too. So, but now, as of now, we'll be covering only the high-level overview. I will try to answer as many questions as feasible. Let's take it ahead. Let's see how it will be. What's there in the store and what's there in vSphere 7. So coming over here, this is what I will be covering. Just a brief intro, why vSphere 7 is so major and so big for VMware and even for the customers. And then I'll be talking about all the features. So right now, we bucketed into 4 major areas. One is the vSphere lifecycle, other is the security aspects, and other is the application acceleration part. So when I say application acceleration, so all the capabilities, what can we do to make it easy to help launch, provision, manage your applications? And the other one is the most important topic everyone is interested on, the vSphere with Kubernetes. So we natively integrated Kubernetes. That's what we are going to use. So let's get into the presentation. So first thing, why this is so important for all of us. So what is it that's there? So everyone, you might have heard the buzz about this Project Pacific. So vSphere 7 with Kubernetes is nothing but it's a Project Pacific part. So we renamed it as vSphere with Kubernetes. So what is so big, so much buzz about this particular topic? You know that, right? So far, it's more, when we say vSphere, it is synonymous to VMs and all of that. So now with 7.0, we natively brought in the Kubernetes into vSphere. That means the way you are provisioning VMs, you will be able to provision the containers as part of your vSphere. So not just that, you can use exactly all the capabilities, all your APIs, all your automation, so far how you have been managing your vSphere infrastructure, in the same way for managing your containers infrastructure as well. So, and adding to that, we brought in the container specific concepts like the namespaces, okay, kubectl, all those things. So where you can leverage all those container specific operations, binaries, APIs, everything as well. So considering that, how we have introduced this one, we want to make it much more developer friendly, as well as provide as much control as possible to the VI admin as well. Keeping all those in mind, okay, that is what this vSphere Kubernetes at a high level is, which is coming as part of 7. So for vSphere 7.0 GA, so this vSphere with Kubernetes is available as part of VCF. So any of the VCF customer, VMware Cloud Foundation customers, will be able to leverage this Kubernetes capabilities. So that's the important buzz to start with. And if we jump a little bit deeper, right? So before I go into all those four buckets which I just talked about, so these are the four broad buckets. Why we made these changes, and what are the why it is so important for us and for the customers. So let me give a brief overview about all these topics. So first one, right, vSphere with Kubernetes. As many of you know that, okay, almost when we talk with our customers, majority of our customers has been reaching out to us and say that, okay, hey, we are running containers on in our infrastructure, so, and we want to use PKS, or we want to run containers on top of VMs. So all those requests have been coming from customers, but we thought through about that. So what is the need for even running containers on top of VMs? Why can't we run containers natively as part of vSphere stack itself? The way how you are provisioning the VMs, right? You can similarly provision the containers itself. So that's a brief summary about this Kubernetes thing, how that thought was born, and then what we made changes for the changes for that one. How it really helps is, okay, it really provides great operational efficiency and collaboration between the developer community for launching their apps, and at the same time for the admins to have better control, to enforce better policies and all those details. So that's the business outcome from the business outcome side. When it comes to the vSphere Lifecycle Manager, the second topic, broad bucket. So yes, we do acknowledge, we do hear your pain points on the lifecycle area. Many of you have complained that, okay, hey, upgrading takes me a couple of months of time, and there is it's really, I need to plan a lot, and how can I achieve consistency across all my clusters? All this feedback has been heard. So that is the outcome of this vSphere Lifecycle Manager enhancements, which I'm going to talk in detail in the further coming slides. So which will explain what kind of changes we have made in this vSphere Lifecycle Manager to make it extremely easy for you guys to manage your infrastructure. So to upgrade, install, manage your infrastructure. And the security aspects. So the third important bucket is security aspect. So we made a lot of changes on the security side, be it the certificate area, be it with respect to your authentication, identity federation parts, and the attestation also. So we introduced new capabilities with respect to the attestation part. So all those new capabilities is something which we have brought as part of 7.4. So the goal is to extend the security from the infrastructure till to your app level, application level. That is where we are working on. So whatever we are trying to build within vSphere, we want to ensure that the security is enforced, whether the data is in motion, whether the data is in runtime, whether the data is in standalone mode. So in all the scenarios, okay, we want to ensure that it is secure and airtight. And the fourth bucket is application acceleration. So see, many of the customers want that, okay, hey, I want to run some AIML application. So I want to run SAP HANA kind of application. I have some workloads which requires heavy GPU intensive process. So, okay, the DRS part of the vSphere stack, okay, can be made much better. And the vMotion, I have problems when I'm trying to do vMotion of workloads which are very large. So these are the kind of feedback which we have been hearing from the customers, and we did right investments considering those feedbacks. And this area covers all those investments, what we have done, and how it will really help you for the next steps. So in a nutshell, these are the four broad buckets. And that's how we try to summarize and explain that, okay, if you look at it, right, so this might be a little confusing, but why we created this slide is to just explain you the kind of changes we have done in 7.4 release, and the breadth of the features, capabilities, new capabilities which we have introduced in 7.4 release, so is humongous. So there's just a slide somewhere gives them high level overview, which I will go deep dive and then try to simplify it for you guys. Let's jump into the actual scenario. So first and foremost thing, how many of you, I think, okay, I shouldn't ask that question. I think almost every one of you should know by now that there is no Windows-based vCenter, and there is no external platform service controller available from 7.4 release onwards. So that means it's only one product which we got. It's vCenter Server, which is an appliance-based product, and it is bundled together with vCenter with our native Photon operating system. So that itself, what is the advantage? Why we did that change? See, with Windows OS, you have to pay separate license for that, and moreover, operating the operating system separately and then the patching the vCenter separately is increasing a lot of complexity. Same with the external platform service controller as well, right? So you have external PSC, but imagine the complexity it goes with the upgrade topologies and all of that. I can have mixed mode combination. I can have that, okay, hey, I can have Windows-based PSC and appliance-based management node. So like that, different kind of combinations. Overall, when we tried evaluating all of that, okay, hey, this, we need to simplify it further for the customer. And then we built all the capabilities as part of vCenter Server appliance, and we got rid of this external PSC topology and the Windows-based vCenter, which in itself, if you look at over here, right, this is what before 7.0 was. So there were almost 64 combinations of lifecycle upgrade. When I say lifecycle upgrade, like install, upgrade, patching, the backup, all these things together, there are almost 64 combinations. So which is too complex for any of our customers to manage. So now this is the scene. There is only one topology, which is vCenter Server appliance. You can link the vCenter Server appliance. You can link as many as 15 vCenters. You can link them in when they're in the same domain. And now we have tools where you can change the domain name, everything. So that 64 topologies now come to hardly 3 combinations. That means there is vCenter Server appliance, which is an embedded mode. You can install it, upgrade it, or patch it. That's it. So only 3 combinations. There are no mixed mode combination like, okay, migration based upgrade, and how I have to upgrade PSC first, and then how I need to proceed ahead with the next step. All those things you don't have to worry about. So that's the humongous change which we brought in vCenter vCenter Server 7.0 as of now. So on the scalability aspects also, right? So we are talking about 7.0 with such a major release. So we even looked at the scalability part also. So like, okay, hey, the customers wants to manage more and more hosts, more and more VMs with single vCenter or with linked vCenters. So we totally relooked at that entire limits. If you look at it this, right, at per vCenter server in standalone mode, there is almost 25% increase in the limits compared to the previous release. And if it is a linked vCenter, it is almost 3 times more the limit. Like we were managing 5K hosts earlier, now you can manage for 15 vCenters, 15,000 hosts. And together for 15 vCenters, you can manage, used to get 50K VMs capability, but in 7.0, you can manage almost 150K VMs with 15 vCenters linked together. So even on the latency aspects, so why this latency aspects, we invested a ton of enhancements as part of latency thing to support the robo-related use cases and enhancements. So we do understand that customers wants to have ESXi in a separate geography or separate location, and vCenter in a separate remote location. So to support these kind of remote scenarios, we need to consider how the highest latencies as possible. So this is the first step in the direction. So 150 milliseconds is just the first step in the direction together, right? If you look at it from client to VC, it is 100, and VC to ESXi, it is 150, and between VC to VC, if it is linked, it is another 150. So total, it's almost a round trip of about 250 millisecond latency is what officially we test and validate that one. So this validation will ensure that even in such kind of robo scenarios, be it any operations done via API or via vSphere client, any operations like the vMotion, the cloning, snapshots, all those things work seamlessly at such high latencies. So that is what we ensured as part of 7.1 release. So let's go little bit deeper. At the end of this section, I will give a pause and then I will try to walk you through, answer some of the questions which you guys got. So another important capability which we have introduced is vCenter server profiles. What is this one? What does this mean actually? So many of our customers have asked that, okay, hey, I have so many vCenters. I just want to ensure that all my vCenters configuration is consistent. That means, let's say, for example, you have VC1 or VC2. So you're deploying a new VC, and you want to ensure that as part of the deployment, so once this new VC is deployed, some of the configuration, the day one, day two, day zero, day two, day one configuration, which you do manually or via your automation, can be incorporated as part of the deployment itself. So that means as soon as the deployment is done, you can apply this profile and say that, okay, this configuration, and make your vCenter ready to use immediately. That is the first part. And let's assume one more thing. You're making a specific configuration change within your vCenter. Like, let's say, for example, you introduce a new alarm definition, or you introduced a new role or privilege like that. So, and now you want to propagate that specific role or privilege to tens of vCenters or hundreds of vCenters in your environment. How do you do that one? That is the second scenario. The third one, let's say, for example, you apply a specific set of configuration as part of your vCenter. And if something gets deviated from that specific configuration, you want to be informed that, okay, you will need a capability that, okay, hey, this particular for this particular vCenter, so-and-so configuration is deviated from the desired state configuration, which I have mentioned. How can I get that one? So we look through all these use cases, and then we have come up with this capability called vCenter server profiles. What this allows us, okay, it allows you to define your desired state configuration in a JSON-based file. So once you define this JSON-based configuration profile, you can use our native REST-based APIs, and you can export that configuration to multiple other vCenters. You can validate that configuration before even applying that configuration. When we say validate, it will do a lot of pre-checks and tell you whether you can apply that configuration or not. Not just that, if something goes wrong, right? Okay, it will tell you why that validation failed and how you can fix that validation. And adding to that, it will even guide you that, okay, hey, if you apply this configuration, there might be a restart of services required. There can be so-and-so changes which will be applied on your system. So it will guide you from the beginning itself. And that's all is done as part of validate step. And then next step is import. Now that you validated your entire JSON-based profile, you can import this configuration onto any vCenter you want, and then you can apply the configuration. So all the APIs, right? So the APIs will allow you to automate. These are all REST-based APIs. You can automate it using your favorite tools like Ansible, Puppet, Chef, Terraform, anything. So one of the goals with which we are working is we are pretty soon going to release the Ansible modules as well, Ansible and Terraform modules as well for these capabilities, which you can just plug into your automation and leverage this ones. So in a nutshell, vCenter server profile allows you to manage a desired state configuration for all your vCenters. So let's say you can define, okay, hey, I want my vCenter to be in so-and-so state. I can define that, okay, hey, this is a configuration parameter, like be it network configuration, management configuration, authentication related configuration, the IDP related settings. So you can define that in a JSON profile, and you can apply it to hundreds of vCenters just like that. One very good thing, let's say, what will happen if this particular apply or import operation fails? No problem. We will ensure to revert it into your same state where everything is working as is. So we don't want to leave your system in an inconsistent state if something goes wrong. So that is very well taken care. So the content library part. So, in 6.7, we introduced a support for VM templates and all those things. Now, as part of 7.2, we made some more enhancements which will help you to easily find your VM template versions. You can look over here. Okay, hey, this is a VM template version and it's updated on so-and-so day, and here is the current version, all those things. So you can even revert back to the previous version, and very simple and easy to understand summary. All those changes have been done as part of the content library. So multi-homing is another capability which we have introduced. What does this multi-homing mean? So many of you have been asking us, okay, hey, can I configure multiple NICs in vCenter server? Earlier on Windows-based vCenter, I used to do that one. Now on vCenter server appliance, will I be able to configure multiple NICs as part of my vCenter server? Is that feasible? Yes, from 7.2 onwards, it is feasible. So if you have vCenter server, you can, apart from your management network, you can configure multiple NICs on the vCenter. Of course, maximum supported is 4 per vCenter. So one of the NIC is usually reserved for VCHA, barring that rest of the other NICs you can use for your backup or admin related traffic, anything like that as such. So that is one more capability. Okay, on the multi-homing part, the Skyline Health Advisory. What is this one? So many of you might be aware that we had a capability, we introduced a capability called vSphere Health Service in 6.7 U1. So now vSphere Health Service is, we integrated Skyline Advisor also as part of the vSphere Health Service. Now that vSphere Health is called as Skyline Health. You can look at it. Once you log into the vSphere Health page, right, as part of the monitor page, monitor tab, you can look at this advisory. So it will have direct access to Skyline Advisory. And for the audience who are not aware of what this vSphere Skyline Health Service is, so basically it will collect some telemetry data from your infrastructure, from your environment, and it will pass the telemetry data. We have some complex rules which we have defined in our cloud. We analyze the data and we will tell you if there is any known issue which we have identified as part of the your environment. And not just that, it will tell you that, okay, hey, there is a so-and-so issue identified, and here is a KB, how you can fix it. Or here is a build which has got the fix for that one. So the health, vSphere Health provides all those capabilities. It is really, really great tool. And I would really recommend all the customers to leverage this capability. Even for customers who says that they are behind firewall, I would recommend them to have one Skyline service as one Skyline service in some kind of test environment or so, and then that will help you to understand all your environment needs and any issues with your environment. Okay, so these are all the guest store related improvements. You can see that, okay, we made some enhancements with the content library part. Just a quick thing. So basically all the guest OS also can leverage the content library related capabilities. That's what we introduced. So, but this capability is available as part of VM tool with hardware version 17. So that is the capability with which it is available as of now. Just to give you guys some overview, what is happening is, okay, they're trying to configure, configure this OS, and then, okay, they are configuring the repository, and from there they are seeing how this can be extended to the multiple guest OS as part of your infrastructure. They're defining over here that files which needs to be imported, and you're just creating this library item, and once you do this, you'll be able to extend it to the guest operating system. Your guest OS can leverage all these files. Okay. Okay, I think I will take a pause for some time and I will wait for your questions before I go with the client enhancements and the lifecycle enhancements. Quickly, any question which I need to answer from the Q&A section or so?
So Nitin, you've been helping us to answer the questions.
So Sandeep, one question here. So on the vCenter profiles side, right? Can the user permission can be exported? That's one question is there.
Yes, it can be. All the roles privileges can be exported.
Yeah. And on the Power CLI support, do we support support DSC in JSON format? So Ankush, can you little elaborate on this? What exactly do you mean?
So the entire desired state profile can be defined in a JSON format. The profile is nothing but it's a JSON based profile. Yeah, you can define it in JSON based profile. The Power CLI support will be available. So we'll be, as I mentioned, pretty soon we'll be releasing the blog post on how you can leverage the vCenter, the APIs, or else the Power CLI commandlets, and can solve your use cases with that.
Okay, and community have question on L1 TF. So for 7.0, have we by default disable the L1TF, or it is enabled for hyperthreading on 7.0 hosts?
Uh, I will try to get back on that
Yeah,
question very soon. So that part I will answer very soon.
yeah. Um, can content library be integrated with VRA?
Good question. So answer is twofold. So there are some enhancements going on with VRA as well. So we are working with VRA team on how that can be extended with to VRA and all these new capabilities which we are building. Right, it's something which will help as part of this orchestration which VRA has already has got. So we are working on that one and. Probably most of it should come as part of this VRA roadmap too. So I will, whoever is the question, right? You can reach out to your respective tabs, and I will try to answer that question uh, by by just okay introducing you to the respective VRA PM who is working on that capability. Okay, I will take a pause. Sorry, I will resume the presentation considering that we have a lot to dive in. Let me go a little bit quickly over here. So the client related enhancements. So we introduced a lot of enhancements on the vSphere client side. Now you can save your searches. So if you search anything, you can see that, okay, as part of your saved searches, you'll see that enhancement too. Uh, and along with that, so this developer center, right? So it really eases your automation and scripting needs. If any of you haven't explored it, do highly recommend looking at this developer center page. What this does is it provides you a API Explorer tab where you can explore all the APIs and even can do a trial run of that APIs too. And not just that, there is something called code capture. So this code capture allows you to, let's say, for example, once you enable the code capture and you start recording, any operations you perform over here, right? It will automatically, you can select the language, relevant language or a tool for that. It will automatically generate the code for you for that operation which you performed on this vSphere client. It's really great capability. I would highly recommend leveraging this capability for any of your automation needs. You can look at it over here. How as you start enabling the code capture and any performing any of the operation, will automatically start generating the code for you. So that is one new capability as part of this one. So now coming to the other important topic, which is the vSphere Lifecycle Manager. So let's go through that one. So first and foremost thing is with respect to the ESXi aspects. What did we introduce from the vSphere Lifecycle Manager as part of the ESXi aspect? So I will talk less and I will try to show you some demo if feasible in the end on the firmware upgrade part of this, how it is done. Okay, let me explain, give you an overview what we meant. So we introduced something called vSphere Lifecycle Manager, which is intended to manage the entire lifecycle operation of ESXi hosts. So what we are doing is, let's say for example, you have 7.0, you have a cluster as part of that 7.0 host. So, and the cluster has got certain set of ESXi hosts. So, like, okay, maybe 4 hosts or 5 hosts or anything like that. So now you can define a desired state for this cluster. What do I mean by desired state? So as part of the desired state, you can specify, okay, hey, for all the host part of this cluster, upgrade them to so-and-so ESXi version. And not just that one. You can even specify like, okay, hey, upgrade it to so-and-so driver version and upgrade to so-and-so firmware version. So if you remember, so far, firmware upgrade is not directly supported from WUM. So this vSphere Lifecycle Manager allows you to define a single desired state where you can specify that, okay, for all the hosts which are part of your cluster, what kind of version you want them to be on, what kind of driver version you want them to be upgraded to, what kind of firmware you want them to be upgraded to. And you can remediate everything at once. So the vSphere Lifecycle Manager in itself will take care of enforcing this entire operations, whatever the desired state is defined for this cluster, right? Enforcing that entire desired state and also checking for any drift or deviation happening for the desired state, which will automatically notify you, okay, saying that, okay, hey, so-and-so host, which is part of this cluster, is deviated from the desired state config. Do you want to bring it back to compliance? So in that kind of mode, and not just that one. So we are introducing something called recommendation engine. which tracks this and validates this firmware, driver, and software compatibility. So this is really helpful in multiple ways, right? So if you look at it earlier, you used to update this driver separately, ESXi separately, firmware separately, which includes multiple reboots. Now, the vSphere lifecycle manager will automatically determine the steps based on the desired state which you define. It will run a series of pre-checks, and not just that one. It will run everything in one step where your number of reboots are also drastically brought down. And not just that one. So it will ensure that any deviations happening for your desired state spec is automatically detected and informed to you in timely manner so that it can brought back into compliance. As of 7.0, you can define only the image part with this desired state spec. In the next iterations, pretty soon, we are working on to integrate even the configuration aspect also as part of this desired state spec. That means with single spec, you can enforce the image, you can apply the configuration for your entire cluster needs. As simple as that. So that's what we're going to bring with this lifecycle management change. So the same things which I just iterated, right? So this recommendation ingenuity will even help you with your hardware compatibility checks, everything actually. So be it whether there is a supported firmware, supported driver, all those things. So it will help you with all the capabilities, which is integrated as part of this vSphere Lifecycle Manager for your host. And another important, sorry, which I forgot to mention. So this lifecycle manager, right? Whatever I mentioned, you're upgrading these drivers, you're upgrading the firmware, right? It works in conjunction with your vendor management tools like Dell Open Manage and HP OneView. For now, we have these two. We are planning to integrate further more. And if you want a complete detail list, like, okay, hey, what all hardware models, what all hardware vendors you support with this one, I think if you go through your compatibility list as part of 7.2, which is released, it will list all the details for you. You can just simply type in the Google like vSphere 7.2 compatibility list, and will take you to our website where all these details are listed. And it will provide you a detailed overview on what all hardware models are supported for this kind of firmware upgrades and entire desired state management from starting from firmware, driver, and ESXi level image too. So before I go there, I will just take a pause. Okay, let me take some quick questions on the vSphere Lifecycle Manager.
So Sandeep, here is a question like whether the lifecycle supports the downgrade of the firmware or the hardware.
Good question. So again, right? Okay, the desired state is nothing but whatever you define. Let's say, for example, in your desired state, you want it to be a so-and-so version. So it doesn't matter. It will run a pre-check. It will ensure that your ESXi and the firmware which you are mentioning is compatible, and then it will provide you the desired state. But the caveat over here, or important thing, which how this entire thing works is, so your cluster should have the host of the same version. So this capability can be leveraged only for hosts which are on 7.0. If it is less than 7.0, then you can't leverage this capability. Next question.
Yeah, so hardware management compatibility with Cisco UCS, are we supporting that?
Yeah, I just answered that question. So there are a lot of within the Cisco UCS and the HP, Dell, right? Okay, there are a lot of models. So we already published that list as part of our HCL, our compatibility checklist. So it is available within VMware website. I can share it post this meeting to that exact link as well.
And does it also support vSAN? Does it support all the firmware or just some firmware?
So when I'm not sure what do you mean by all the firmware. Okay, vSAN firmware, yeah. So it will take care of the vSAN needs, but all the firmware in sense, okay, if you're talking about the hardware models, okay, we started with some vendors, and some more is still work in progress. So we'll get there pretty soon for almost all. The goal for us is if a particular hardware model is validated by VMware, then that means it is supported.
Okay.
Eventually, yeah. Okay, let's move to the next one. Okay, next is the vCenter Server Update Planner. So, okay, here is the problem, detailed problem statement which our customers has given us. Okay, hey, I'm upgrading my vCenter or I'm upgrading my SXI. Is it compatible? What will happen to my NSXI? What will happen to my VROps? So, or what is this particular hardware model compatible? Is this particular ESXi compatible? Is this particular NSX compatible? How can I get this entire details so that I can plan my upgrade easily? So this has been more or less a manual effort so far where customers used to spend a lot of time. So we try to ease that pain with this vCenter Server Update Planner. So vCenter Server Update Planner provides you APIs and UI. It will help you. You can say that, okay, hey, I want to upgrade my vCenter server to so-and-so version. And then it will help guide you to exactly discover some of the products which are already available. And if a product is automatically not discovered, then you have provision to add that specific product and can determine if that what is whether it is compatible or not. Based on the compatibility, based on the version which you want to upgrade to, you will be able to generate a detailed Excel which will list you with all the compatibility versions, everything. So that not just that one, even within the page itself, so the UI itself, we allowed you to run the pre-upgrade checks for you right away. Let's say, for example, you want to move to so-and-so a specific version. Before even upgrading, you can run the pre-upgrade checks directly from the client UI itself. You don't have to go through this upgrade installer or so and run any of these pre-checks. So these pre-checks are available as part of that vSphere client itself, where you can run that and see if you'll run into any issues before even upgrading over that. So all these changes have been introduced as part of vCenter Server Update Planner. So pretty soon we'll be providing you help with even generating the sequence of steps. It's not just saying whether it's a particular product is compatible or if what product is compatible. Pretty soon we are going to say, okay, hey, you're upgrading vCenter to so-and-so version. You got so many products like NSX, VROps, and all of those things. So here is the upgrade sequence for you. You need to upgrade first this product and then followed by next this product and then the other product. So like that, we'll be generating even a sequence for you pretty soon. That capability is not there. The sequence generation is not there in 7.0. That will come pretty soon. But rest of the capabilities which I defined initially are available as part of 7.0 GA. Any question on vCenter Server Update Planner?
So Sandeep, one question here is a lot of coming from a lot of participants. Do we need to integrate a Dell OEM or HP OpenView tool in order to use this feature?
You mean to use this capability? Or
Yeah.
you mean the one which I
Life cycle.
mentioned over here in the life cycle?
Life cycle.
No, this question is for the ESXi.
ESXi life cycle manager.
ESXi lifecycle manager.
Okay, okay. So for ESXi lifecycle, right? Okay, when you say integrate with that, basically it's a repository, right? So you need to specify your firmware and upload that to the repository, or else it's not easy for the vSphere lifecycle manager to pull that firmware from somewhere. And it needs a way to pull that firmware. It won't automatically connect to the sites and then download that firmware. So what we have provided is we provided a recommendation engine, which will tell you what is a compatible drivers or firmware for that. So you can download that firmware and you need to upload that entire thing as a repository. And then the vSphere Lifecycle Manager will take care of upgrading that firmware and drivers and ESX image, everything. But yeah, it does require you uploading those images.
One more question, Sandeep. So I think probably all the participants are more interested into this. Have we reduced down the number of reboots required in that regard, like smart
yeah,
quick
it
boots?
is right. So if you look at it, so in 6.7, we introduced the quick boot capability. Okay, so what quick boot capability does is, if you are not doing a hardware initialization, then it will refresh everything within the memory, and you don't have to do multiple. The reboot hardly takes 5 seconds of time. So now, bundle this feature with what we are introducing now with vSphere Lifecycle Manager. Only the firmware and some of the driver versions mandate you to do an entire reboot. But within ESXi image, majority of the things can be done without reboot. Now what we are saying is, okay, you define your firmware, you define your driver version, and you define your ESXi image. Then the vSphere Lifecycle Manager will in itself figure out all the dependencies. It will run all the validations and will apply everything in one go. That means the reboot, multiple reboots are already reduced, and it's just only one reboot eventually it is going to be. Significant improvement. But yeah, firmware upgrades in majority of the cases requires hardware initialization, so it will be a complete reboot. So quick boot capability cannot be leveraged if you are doing a firmware upgrade as well. Okay.
Thank you, Sandeep.
So,
Perfect.
Sandeep, but there is one more question. Does VC 7.0 support NSXV? Because in the interop, I see that NSXV, no version of NSXV is supported. It is only NSXT.
Yeah, I think there are some details over there. Currently it is NSXE. We have introduced something called NSX embedded or something it is called. So
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
It is for WCP, NSXE,
yeah.
and on 7.0 NSXT. NSXV version we supported till the last release actually.
6.7.
6.7.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
NSXT is much better and enhanced version. It's more for heterogeneous networking use cases and all of that. So, okay, so let's dive into the security aspects. So to understand what we got from security side. So first thing, okay, this has been many of you have reached out to us and said, okay, hey, certificates, it's a very tedious job in vCenter to replace the certificates. And there's so many certificates. You look at it over here, 6.x has got lots of certificates. You're seeing it, right? So what we did in 7.0 made it much simpler. We got rid of, we deprecated the solution is related certificates. We are now all you see is the machine SL certificate and the trusted root certificate. That's all you need to manage. And even that, unlike in 6.x, in 7.0, you got REST-based APIs, you got a UI where you can renew, replace all your certificates from just the UI via UI or API. And renew replace operation both for the VMCI certificates as well as even the custom third-party certificates as well. So all those changes have been introduced in 7.4. Any of your automation needs will be met with this one, and even drastic simplification. Look at it. So there were almost a machine SL certificate, root certificate, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 solution user related certificates. All those things we just got it down into 2 certificates now. As simple as that. So that is one major change which we have introduced from the certificate management side. So the next one is on the identity federation. Okay, fine. What is this one? Many of our customers have been asking, okay, hey, we want support for multi-factor authentication. We want to, can you support this SAML work-based authentication, walk-2 based authentication, all this advanced new authentication capabilities? Can we do that one? So in 7.0, we are officially going to support federation via ADFS. So that means, let's say, for example, you log into, you configure ADFS, you log into your vSphere client, then will automatically vCenter will log into your favorite, let's say ADFS, and then from ADFS you can redirect to some other authentication or so. And once the token is received, vCenter server will take the token and provide you the access accordingly. So all this multi-factor related authentication capabilities are enabled as part of 7.0. So for now, we started with ADFS. Pretty soon, we are working on introducing some more identity providers like VIDM, our own VIDM, and much more capabilities like Okta, Ping. All those things is something which we are actively pursuing and looking forward to integrate with. But this is really a good starting. So anyone who has got need for this multi-factor authentication or walk-through based authentication mechanism, so we introduce, this is really, really helpful. And just be aware that in 7.0, we do recommend to use AD or LDAP rather than just directly AD or ADFS actually. So ADFS is the preferred one, which is federation, or AD or LDAP. So the reason why I'm saying rather than AD, because, okay, we announced the deprecation of integrated Windows authentication in 7.0. So we are trying to address all the gaps, all the feature gaps which we have with IWA. Pretty soon, I think it will, whatever AD or LDAP and ADFS, all the federation things which we support, will solve all your needs with the which currently are met with IWA as well. So this is how you can configure so you can configure your ADFS for vCenter server, and then once you log into the client page, you can have this. There are certain steps which you need to follow over here, and that's it. It's just 2-3 steps, and once you log in, you'll automatically redirect your corporate identity provider, and there it will ensure to authenticate your credentials and then redirect to the vSphere client page. As simple as that. So other thing, I just mentioned in the very beginning, this vSphere Trust Authority. So if you remember in 6.7, right? Okay, so this attestation is like, it's done by vCenter server. So it's done by a VM. So encryption keys, everything is managed by vCenter server. That means you cannot encrypt vCenter server. It leads to dependency loop. If you want to encrypt something, right? Okay, it is done via vCenter server, and the keys are saved as part of vCenter server. So you can't encrypt the vCenter server. So now in 7.0, we introduce this vSphere Trust Authority, which ensures that you can encrypt workload even the vCenter server instances also. So, and it will reduce your audit and all this risk, all this security issues which were earlier exposed because of vCenter, because you can't authenticate or encrypt the vCenter server. So of course, this does require this TPM, and it does create some, what do you say? So there is some, you can integrate your own key manager, third-party key manager solutions, anything you got, you can integrate that too as part of your trust authority. So that is also supported as of now. So I'm not sure if any of you have got this application level security where you need to secure your runtime data and all of this. So if that is the case, then Intel has a capability called Intel SoftGuard extension. So that's what it's called, SGX, Intel SGX. So it allows applications to work with hardware, and it allows to encrypt that one also. So we made some changes so that, okay, any of these applications, right, which has got the sensitive logic and storage for this runtime, so that can be encrypted actually. So we created this secure enclave supporting this Intel SoftGuard extension. This is for customers who use this kind of hardware and this Intel SGX chips which they got, and this requirement that, okay, they need to have this runtime encryption and all of those capabilities. For them, okay, we introduce this support, which we call it as vSGX support. Okay, the application acceleration part. Let's look at it. I believe almost every one of you might be using the DRS. So in 6.7, if you guys remember, we introduced something called a totally revised version of DRS, which we used to call DRS 2.0. So look at this one. So originally within 6.7 or so far, the DRS is more the cluster centric. So it runs every 5 minutes or so, and use a cluster-wide standard deviation model. Like, okay, it will analyze all the host part of the cluster. So at cluster level, it determines that, okay, hey, it takes some parameters and understands that, okay, hey, for this cluster, okay, this is all the max rebalancing which you can do. So that used to be the logic. But now in 7.0, we revamped and improved it to make it more workload centric. If you look at it, right, so it runs every 1 minute. And instead of this cluster-wide deviation model, we use more like a VM DRS score. So where we are trying to analyze it at per host, some parameters, and determining, okay, hey, what is the best way to distribute your VMs as part of this entire cluster. So we shifted this deviation model from cluster level to the host level, which really improves the resource balancing and all of these aspects. So if you look at it, right, so compared to earlier, and the kind of recommendations, how it does in a much better way is really phenomenal. So please try out this new DRS feature, and not just that part. So this DRS, right? Okay, we introduced some new along with the hardware accelerators as well. So let's say, for example, so how we are considering the HA support when we are enabling DRS, and let's say, for example, you got some kind of PCIe devices attached or configured through, or you have this NVIDIA or VGPU related VMs which you are leveraging. So while doing the vMotion and all those things, so we consider all of these hardware related accelerators also into consideration, and not just that one. So look at this one. So right now, so far with vMotion, right, there was difficulty in managing the larger scale VMs. Like, okay, when you're managing a VM like which is host SAP HANA kind of application, there used to be large amount of it used to take large amount of time, and the stun times were really high, and the performance impact was high. All those things were there. So now this entire vMotion was fine-tuned and refined to reduce the stun times and totally redesigned to accommodate this SAP HANA kind of large applications. So right now we are bringing back this vMotion capabilities for such large scale workloads like SAP HANA or Oracle or these kind of VMs. So, and you can see that even the optimizations which are done for this vMotion, right? Okay, I can go much deeper, like, okay, the kind of optimizations which were done, it's more at the memory copy level, and while at the swap level, which we have done, will really show you the difference on how fast and how improved performance is with the 7.4 for this one. So more on the technical details, right? So when I was talking about the vMotion at per memory swap and all those things, so if you look at it at the high level, so we have something called page tracers. So which we trace, like, okay, when we are doing a vMotion, we check that, okay, hey, there are certain specific data pages, okay, which we need to transfer from here to other. So this is traced actually, and we are trying to install that page tracers at every vCPU of the VM so far. And this used to impact some performance on the guest, and that's the reason why there was some kind of slowness and stun times were higher during the previous version. Now, as I mentioned, we revamped our entire DRS and vMotion related capabilities, where instead of deploying these page tracers at every vCPU, we just take it for one CPP for a VM, and then manage with that for the entire VM. This really lowers the performance impact and optimizes the memory pre-copy time, all those things. So, and as I mentioned, even for the stun time, right? So the goal for us is, okay, to be less than 1 second for even a large scale workload with some 256 vCPUs and 60 VRAM, even for such kind of workloads also, we are aiming to have the stun time less than 1 second. So that is where we have done optimizations with vMotion in terms of vSphere 7 capability. So if any of you have got these new capabilities for or requirements to run AI or ML kind of workloads, so then this capability is for you. So last year we acquired a company called Bitfusion. So what with leveraging the Bitfusion, what we are trying to provide is, okay, so we are trying to optimize our vSphere workloads for machine learning. So what do we do? What do I mean by that? So if you consider this one, right? Okay, this hardware accelerated GPUs, FPGAs, ASICs, all those things. So for running your AI/ML workloads, these form very crucial. These are very critical as well. So, but these are very expensive, and you can't have so many vGPUs and let them underutilized. So if you look at it, this is the common challenges that we have with GPUs. So sometimes there are we have scenarios where the AI servers are oversubscribed, that there is no free GPU, anything available at all. And in some scenarios, they are totally undersubscribed. So, and moreover, there is a kind of need that, okay, these GPUs should be tied or tightly coupled with the hardware where the ESXi or anything is residing. So for such an expensive equipment, we should have a very proper way to balance the GPU usage. So with Bitfusion, we are going to provide that capability. What we are going to provide is the GPU servers can be residing even remotely as well. So they don't have to be part of the vSphere. I mean, they don't have to be part of the ESXi server where your ESXi is running. They can be remotely running, and we can pull in those capabilities and provide that capability that expose that to the VMs running on your ESXi servers. That means the GPU server pool which are running remotely can help you run your AI/ML workloads directly from your ESXi server. So this is a capability which we are trying to provide as part of the 7.4 release. So this will ensure that all your resources, the GPU specific resources, or optimally utilized. So this is a new capability which we are going to provide as part of 7.4. So I'll take a pause for a minute before I go with the Kubernetes. I just want to talk a little bit deeper on the Kubernetes and show you guys a short demo of it also. So let me take any questions.
So Sandeep, considering we have a lot of questions today, so whatever we can address in this session is fine. Otherwise, we are planning to create a separate FAQ document. We'll share it with you and the team so that you can get all the questions addressed, and then we'll share it with the respective time for attendees, because I think we have a lot of questions. So if we are unable to answer all of them, I think that's okay. We are
Absolutely.
anyways doing that.
Absolutely. As I mentioned, right? So going ahead, you can select any specific topics. Right now, what I'm trying to provide is a very high level overview, like maybe 1,000 feet overview. So, but we can do deep dive for any specific customer if they're interested in a specific feature or so. So we can make that happen too.
So Sandeep, we'll take 2-3 questions before you move into vSphere with Kubernetes.
Yes, please.
How does resiliency work if there is only one vCPU for memory copy, the compact memory copy?
Sorry, how does what work?
Resiliency work.
I really don't know what do we mean by resiliency, but okay. So that page tracer, what I just mentioned per vCPU, right?
Correct.
So it is mainly for tracking purpose. If something goes wrong, it's not a problem. So we have a redundancy over there for as part of the other one, but actually there is only one thing which will be running as part of any vCPU. So the problem earlier was, okay, too many page traces which were running were trying to provide it in certain way. The VM related information and all those details, tracking all the pages, all those things. So, but it was not optimally leveraged. So what we are trying to do is we are optimize our logic so that even though it is running within the single vCPU, everything is much faster. If something goes wrong with that, it's not a problem. So there is always another one which will be in its place. So.
Okay. So are there any further improvements in the CPU schedulers to mitigate the Spectre meltdown performance issues while we disable hyperthreading?
Okay, I see the hyperthreading question is coming at, I mean, again, yeah. Yes, there are a lot of improvements which are done for that one. So in fact, I can use this statement because we did validate this considering for monster VM capabilities. When I say monster VM, the VMs of size like with 256 vCPUs at 60B RAM, this kind of VMs. So we observed like literally more than 2x improvements in performance wise and even time based optimization wise, all those things. So you can just give a try for this 7.0. It will really it will really impress you a lot in terms of performance and those things.
Okay.
Not much.
So with respect to BitFusion, do we have a separate stack for GPU network?
When you say stack, what do you mean by that? You mean the license stack, or you mean it should be residing on a separate one?
I think separate physical host, a cluster of physical hosts for the GPUs.
It can be anywhere. That's what I was trying to say actually. So this can be a separate GPU server pool. It can be residing remotely, or it can be part of your hardware where ESXi is running. Nagoria, you want to take that question?
Yeah, so it's basically a server client architecture where you actually have the GPU capacity on one host and then you can pull in. So there will be a client running on your VMs and that runtime pull in the capacity of GPU for whenever there's a need. Is that your question?
Yeah, that was the question from Ankush City. So I think you have answered it.
Yeah.
So your GPU servers can be residing remotely, and based on the need and based on your application demand, it will leverage this remote GPU servers and to expose you all the capabilities.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we said DRS is based on configured memory, so does that mean there is no overcommitment now for memory? Just the question from Biswajit.
There is still the overcommitment part which you can configure and give that. So absolutely, that's totally supported even now too.
And how much bandwidth is required to get most of the vMotion improvements which we have in 7.0?
Okay, that's a very good question. So let me explain this one. So we do validate within our environment for all the vMotions at 1 Gbps, 10 Gbps, 40 Gbps, and 100 Gbps. So the recommendation practice is that, okay, pretty soon I'm going to bring out a white paper on this vMotion capabilities as well. So if it is above 10 Gbps, right, okay, at 40 Gbps or 100 Gbps bandwidth, the recommendation is that, okay, please do keep the latency minimal. So if the latency is high at 100 Gbps, imagine if you got some 150 milliseconds or 250 millisecond latency at 100 Gbps, then the packet loss is going to be huge. So if, as long as the latency is minimal, then even at 100 Gbps, I think you can optimally leverage that kind of bandwidth also very well. And we did extensive validation at each and every network level. So at each and every network throughput, and we observed that, okay, we optimally utilize the entire network bandwidth while doing the vMotion. It's not just for vMotion, it's even for all this concurrent operations which are there, right? vMotion, snapshot, cloning, all these scenarios. So
I think let's continue with Kubernetes. We have a lot of questions. We can't answer it in this 1 hour.
Okay, perfect. Let's go to Kubernetes. So I gave a brief overview earlier, right? So I explained that what we are trying to do with Kubernetes. We are trying to bring best of the two worlds. So people wants container because it helps them to provide more agility and easy for developers, and helps them to quickly launch their applications. All these things. So now on the other hand, we got vSphere, which is very secure and very easy to provision, manage, and a lot of these other capabilities, which has been in your data centers from quite a long time. With vSphere with Kubernetes, we are trying to bring best of the two worlds. So see, a typical IT administrator, what is the major goal for them? Hey, what they want is, okay, hey, I want a scalable infrastructure that is very easy for me to manage and easy for my users also to consume. When I say users, it can be for the IT administrator, the user can be either developers or the internal team who wants to launch some applications, all those things. So that is a typical ask for IT administrator, where the IT administrator still wants the majority of the control to enforce all his policies. When it comes to the developer, they want an easy way to build their apps, and they don't want, okay, hey, for every request, they don't want to say that, okay, hey, provision me so and so more, some more memory, some more CPU, some more network, all these things. So they want it to be in a much cost efficient and simple way to be supported by their internal IT team as well. So this is how the two thought processes. That's where we introduced our VMware Cloud Foundation service. Together we call it as VMware Tanzu. So internally it has got 4 broad things. One is the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid service, other is the compute services, other is the network services, and the storage services. So with VMware Cloud Foundation, which we call it as VCF, so you have all these capabilities available. So VCF provides you the entire SDDC stack. And now, if you want this Tanzu to be leveraged within your data center, you need to opt for this VCF thing as of 7.4 GA. So let's look what it is exactly. What is this vSphere with Kubernetes mean? So first thing, for developer, if you look this entire thing, right, it allows you for self-service development. That means, see, fundamentally you are a developer. What you need is, okay, from the admin side, okay, they will want to allocate you some kind of resource pools, and you want to leverage that and build your applications. And if it is at the development stage, you want to have faster turnaround, like, okay, hey, I want to quickly deploy this, I want to quickly monitor this, and now I have this entire Kubernetes thing, so I want to leverage all those Kubernetes open source capabilities. So as part of my development process, and I want to leverage the same for that. But as part of BI admin, you want to ensure that, okay, hey, my developers or my team is using this entire my infrastructure. I want to enforce certain policies because they don't break the infrastructure. I want to ensure that, okay, they have the authentication or they have the permissions to access only things which is required by them, and not each and every detail. So like that, VA admin itself has got certain workflows defined for him. Now with these two in picture, what we are trying to provide is, okay, this vSphere with Kubernetes. We are empowering the developer and we are assuring the admin that, okay, he will still get the control of the entire infrastructure and he can define the entire access policies. He can define the control on the resources, how much the developers can consume, all those things. And yet in a much better and seamless way. Look at how this works. So the main challenge, right? Okay, from the developer perspective. So I want to deploy this app and I want to operate it on day two. And I have certain tool choices like, okay, hey, use so-and-so tool, all those things. So if I am doing this one, so for me, this container-based environment is very helpful. So Kubernetes provides me all these capabilities. So now from the admin perspective, okay, fine. Okay, all these things are good. How can I monitor whatever they are deploying? How can I ensure that this infrastructure is available? Sorry. How can I ensure that this infrastructure is available? And how can I optimally control that they are not exceeding the quota which is assigned to them? All these are the worries of the challenges of the VI admin. With Kubernetes, vSphere with Kubernetes, right? What we have introduced is we have natively bundled the entire Kubernetes within the vSphere stack. So that means when you deploy vSphere, we have something called vSphere Lite. So what it is, okay, we have taken the Kubernetes and created some kind of container runtime environment natively as part of ESXi. So we are calling it as CRX or so. So what this CRX does is it provides you container runtime environment. Many of you who are familiar with VMX, which is a VM runtime environment, similar to that, the CRX provides a container runtime environment. Why do we need that one? So see, if you want to run containers on top of VM, then you definitely don't need anything. You can just take any VM and deploy container on top of that one. But that has got certain memory overhead, so which we have observed too. So rather than running containers on top of VMs, say VM is residing over there, and then on top of that you have containers, and on top of the containers you got your applications. All this is a major overhead for in terms of memory and even for managing as well. So with this CRX, it provides you, rather than spawning a VM, you can natively spawn a container in its place. That means all you see is just a container. As in the similar way you're spawning your VM, you can simply, in a simple and efficient way, you can spawn the containers. This container runtime environment provides you the isolation in the same way as how it provides for your VMs. So that is the advantage of this the CRX. And not just that, we have something called this control plane, which we introduced. Let me talk about this one. Let's say, for example, you can define a namespace over here saying that, okay, hey, this is my application and this is the entire details. I want to have some 3 count of this one, and this is the flavor of this Kubernetes version I want to introduce, and all of those things. So, and you can start creating your pods and containers, everything with respect to that one. So, and the same namespace concept, right? Once you define this one, it will allow you to spawn the containers and it will allow you to enforce all these policies on this namespace. A better thing for this one, the same namespaces can be leveraged for even deploying the VMs also. That means you are not just managing your containers with these namespaces, you're managing both your containers and VMs together. So both your legacy applications and your the container new container specific native applications can be managed using one namespace. So one thing we all need to accept is that, okay, it's not so easy to move all these legacy applications directly from VMs onto containers, right? So we still need to continue supporting them, and we still need all these modern capabilities, whatever we are defining with containers, to manage these legacy VMs as well. So if we want to do that, so we thought, what is a better way than bringing both this VMs and containers management under the same umbrella? So this Kubernetes cluster, or what we call this control plane, or this guest cluster. So it will allow you to manage both your VMs and containers by defining the same namespace. So this Kubernetes namespace, what it does is it enforces, it's general Kubernetes based namespace. It allows you to specify the access control policies. It allows you to specify what are the restrictions. It allows you to specify, okay, hey, what kind of other policies you want to enforce or apply on that one, what kind of quotas you want to enforce on that one. All those things can be specified on using this namespace. And not just that one. We have this something called this kubectl, which will allow you to run all the Kubernetes-based commands, everything which is supported on natively on the vSphere environment. So everything is available as part of that one. So if you look at it, this is how it is. I just explained to you guys, right? Okay, vAdmin, you can continue start logging into vCenter server. From vCenter server, all you see is your clusters and ESXi's everything. You can start configuring your namespaces on a specific cluster and say that, okay, for that particular namespace, you can say that, okay, hey, these are the policies, these are the access policies and control policies for this namespace. And you can start provisioning the containers. And you can assign that namespace to a specific developer or so. So what the developer can do is, okay, since you have already enforced the policies using for that particular namespace, the developer can leverage that namespace, and it will be ensured that, okay, they are adhered to the policies which are enforced and applied on the namespace. So vAdmin still gets the control on everything from beginning till end, and the developer gets the flexibility of provisioning the containers and managing, defining it in the way and running it in the way they want, and still leveraging all the Kubernetes related APIs, commandlets, everything for that. So let me show you some short demo. If you look at it, right, okay, this is what we are trying to do. So this pod is nothing but, okay, we have something called a pod-based mechanism, which will allow you to manage a group of containers, a pod of containers. At the same time, you can have both VMs also running on that. The Spearlet is nothing but our own customized version of Kubernetes. We customized Kubernetes and then introduced this something called Spearlet over here. This Spearlet is the one which helps us to communicate with vCenter server, and any action, any invocation you do from vSphere will be invoked by the Spearlet, and you can see that reflecting over here. So earlier for VMs, we have something called similar mechanism called hostd. So now for containers, we introduce this customized version of Kubernetes called Spearlet. So if you look at it, right, so this is how it looks, that entire thing. So you can create certain supervisory clusters, which is nothing but a group of hosts. On each of those hosts, you can define certain namespaces. Namespaces are nothing but, okay, each namespace has got certain resource pool. So with certain quota for CPU, memory usage, all those things. So if you define certain quota, then that means you can't exceed that quota which is defined within that namespace. So on top of this SDTC, which is nothing but it has got both the ESXi, the compute part, and the vSAN or the storage part, and the NSX, which is the network part, everything together, which is bundled as one capability. And on top of that, you have multiple clusters, which you usually create. And at the cluster level, you can define the namespaces and say that, okay, hey, I want to create this namespace, and these are certain quota which I want to specify for this namespace. And these are the policies who can leverage or access this namespace. All those things you can define. It's general Kubernetes based namespace construct. So once that is defined, then the developers who has got access to this namespace will be able to leverage this one and start provisioning the VMs or containers, and they can manage these VMs or containers the same way how they manage any of the Kubernetes, any of the containers using Kubernetes. So on the back end, you can see this one. So what is exposed to the customer is the namespace, but in the back end, it is nothing but a resource pool which has got all the restrictions which are exposed, which are applicable to these namespaces. So I just explained about the kubectl plugin, right? So we do extend this kubectl plugin, and it works. So for now, within 7.0, you may have to deploy this via zip file on the supervisory cluster or so. And once it is done, you can start managing it in the same way how you manage any of your Kubernetes-based containers in your environment. So that is how we support it actually. So one more thing, one important question which some of the customers have asked us is, okay, hey, you're natively bundling this Kubernetes into vSphere or in vCenter stack. So will you take care of who will manage any revisions or updates to this Kubernetes thing? What will happen if any security vulnerability comes to this Kubernetes thing? So that will be taken care by us. VMware will continuously release the Kubernetes space updates, we will ensure that we have a very periodical updates for whatever we are customizing. Since I mentioned, right, we have some customized version of this Kubernetes thing within our environment. And we bundle that natively within vSphere. So we will ensure that we periodically provide updates for any new capabilities introduced by the Kubernetes open source community or any vulnerabilities which are fixed as part of that. So there will be a periodical updates from our side. So you don't have to worry about that one. And the upgrade part is nothing different at all. So the regular way how you upgrade your vCenter server or how you upgrade your ESXi host, everything is the same. There is nothing changed over there. All these are abstract concepts which are residing within ESXi. But for you, what will be exposed is this namespaces. And what you need to do is, okay, you need to configure these namespaces, and you can start deploying, provisioning your VMs. And of course, all the Kubernetes related commandlets, APIs, everything will work for you as it is in the same way. Okay, I will go for a demo rather than talking about these things. So I will take a pause. I will let you guys ask as many questions as feasible for this Kubernetes part.
So
one specific thing which I want to address again, iterate, right? So for 7.0 GA, vSphere with Kubernetes is available as part of vCloud Foundation Suite. That means you need to have vCloud Foundation Suite. Of course, customers can say that, okay, hey, I don't have vSAN. How can I do that? There is a version of vCloud Foundation which doesn't mandate for vSAN. I believe you can opt for that too. Pretty soon, we are working on how we can make it available for all the other types like enterprise class also, all those things also. So that is already work in progress. Sorry.
So this was a question from Vijendra. NSXT is mandatory for vSphere based Kubernetes. So you said vSAN is not mandatory, but I think NSXT is still mandatory, right?
Yeah, for now it is. See, we are talking about this NSXT, right? Okay, we are really exploring how we can have some kind of embedded NSX capabilities within ESXi and leverage that one. For now, you need NSXT. Yes.
Okay. So CRX will spawn containers directly on ESXi host and not on VM. Can the same
No, it doesn't spawn on VM. Yeah. Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah. So can the same ESXi host a VM, or it will be reserved for containers only? I think it is for both, right? VMs and
no, you can have it for both. So that's the flexibility, right? We just talked about it, saying that, okay, hey, you don't have to worry that, okay, certain ESX, I can only deploy containers and I can't deploy VMs. Or with this namespace control, whatever we are defining or specifying over here, can it only manage the containers and not the VMs? Because namespace is a Kubernetes construct. And why can we extend it to VMs and also no worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
So if it is that CRX is meant to natively provide some container runtime environment and all of that. So, but within ESXi, you can have both VM and container. And within the namespace, you can define your access policies, your quota, everything for both containers and VMs. You define that all you see in the backend is it's more like a resource pool. That's it.
Right. So the question was, how different is namespace compared with DRS resource pool?
See, DRS resource pool is totally different, right? So the namespace over here is more at even access level also. You are enforcing the quotas, everything actually. Of course, if the, okay, hey, what kind of DRS policies can I configure on top of this namespace and all those things? So you can do that. At the end of the day, it's all the cluster. See, you're creating all this namespace on top of cluster. So you can, whatever DRS related policies you configure at cluster level are still applicable. Be it VMs or containers, everything is still applicable.
Mm-hmm. Can we also manage pods inside the VMs using this?
No one is stopping you, but actually, why do you want to do that in any way? So one of the reasons why we introduce this native container support is that, okay, hey, rather than running it on top of VM, so this provides you a much better capability. Just to share with you some numbers, right? The containers which we are providing natively as part of vSphere are 30% much faster than running on VM and 8% faster than running on bare metal, than even on bare metal. That's the reason why I emphasized that CRX part, because the kind of enhancements which you introduce with that container runtime environment will provide you, if you're running containers native on a bare metal server, compared to that, it is 8% much more faster running it on vSphere, on ESXi, creating the containers on ESXi. So this is just the version 1.0, and I think we in future we can expect much better out of it.
Does VMware provide support for Kubernetes cluster as well? I think the answer is yes.
Yes, I just explained that part. Yes, so since we bundle this one, right? So it is not a direct Kubernetes what we got. So we do some customization to this, and then we integrate it as part of vSphere. So that's the reason we will take care of providing the regular updates for you for any new capabilities or for any security vulnerabilities. So that's with us. We'll take care of that one.
Is it possible to consume vSphere Kubernetes via vCloud Director?
Not yet. Not yet. Sorry, I think vCloud Director team is actively looking for supporting the Kubernetes part. I think you should see pretty soon from them. You should hear from them pretty soon. But as of now, no.
Okay. Is the pod actually a VM internally?
Sorry.
So when we say we deploy a pod, so is this pod actually a VM internally inside the ESXi host with a CRX?
Pod is nothing but a group actually. So when I say pod, I meant it's like a group of VMs or something like that.
Okay. Okay. Will namespace names be unique across whole vCenter as the plugin is applicable at the vCenter server level?
It's highly recommended, right? So because if you have a different namespaces, then there will definitely be a conflict. So yeah, namespaces should be unique.
Can we spin up VMs with Kubernetes API? Does vCenter support the Kubernetes API manifest?
We do support, we will be eventually going to support everything with respect to Kubernetes API manifest, but for spinning the VMs, I don't think you can use the Kubernetes APIs, no.
Okay.
So imagine this one. So whatever vSphere APIs which we are trying to provide, right, it will allow you to manage everything. You don't have to redo any of the part. You don't have to worry, okay, will the way how I provision containers change? No, it's more or less same way how you're provisioning your VMs. It's same way how you're doing vMotion of the VMs, okay, you can do vMotion of containers. It's same DRS policies, what you're configuring for VMs is applicable for the containers as well. Everything is same. The APIs, the SDK which we are going to release, you can leverage the same thing. You don't have to rewrite your automation. You don't have to redo anything. Everything is same. It's just that we introduced this native support of these containers. We introduced this namespace concept where you need to define the namespace so that you can have better control on the resource quota, the permission, all those things. Rest, everything stays same. The Power CLI will be supported. The APIs, SDKs, everything will be supported. Whatever automations you're working on, everything will work as it is. So there's no issue with that.
So, Sandeep, one last question before we move. There's a question: how will the Kubernetes replica set work alongside vSphere HA to ensure availability of pods?
The vSphere HA is more at the hardware fault, right, for ESXi level actually. So it is the same thing. So whether your container resides on, I mean, be it a container or a VM, whatever it resides, right? So on a specific ESX, it's the same way how a current vSphere HA works. Something goes wrong with your hardware, then if vSphere HA is enabled, we will ensure that there is automatically it is triggered over there, and all your, based on the policies you configured, all your VMs or containers will be moved to the new one automatically. So everything is same.
Okay, I think we're done with questions. So you can take with the demo part.
Okay, let me quickly show this demo so that, sorry, 1 second.
By the way, your screen share is stopped, so you may need to start it again.
Sorry, 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
I'm I'm Michael West with VMware. This is an overview of Project Pacific. Project Pacific fundamentally changes how developers get access to vSphere infrastructure and how IT operations provides governance. Kubernetes is now part of vSphere and is referred to as the supervisor cluster. Kubernetes pods deployed on the supervisor cluster run directly on ESXi in a new container runtime that provides the security and performance of a VM with the small footprint and fast startup of containers. The supervisor cluster will run a service that allows development teams to provision their own Kubernetes clusters on demand. There are additional services to deploy traditional virtual machines and even third-party applications. Developers accomplish this with the same tools they use with any other Kubernetes application deployment. Okay, let's jump in and see how this works. We start with a single HA cluster containing 4 hosts. As you can see by the presence of the Kubernetes API service, we have already enabled Kubernetes directly on this cluster. We select Workload Platform and see a list of available namespaces. Namespace is an extension to the core Kubernetes namespace construct and allows the VI admin to attach policy that spans both vSphere and Kubernetes. All developer workloads run in the namespaces they are assigned. Our application platform team has requested resources for a new application the development team is working on. The IT operations team will create a namespace for them. The first thing we will do with our new namespace is to provide access to our application platform team by adding edit permissions for them. A Kubernetes role binding is created, and the platform team will now be able to create objects in the Kubernetes namespace. Users will be authenticated to the cluster using vSphere single sign-on. Our admin can associate vSphere storage policies to this workload. In our case, we will assign our gold disk policy. This will automatically create a Kubernetes storage class and associate it to this policy. Both resource and object quotas can be set for the namespace. We will set limits on CPU and memory. Each namespace is backed by a resource pool, and these limits are enforced there. Storage limits can also be set. These are enforced through Kubernetes storage class resource quotas assigned to the namespace. Finally, the admin provides access to the cluster by simply sharing the IP address of the master node with developers. This opens a web page that provides details on downloading the CLI. As a developer, we can select the appropriate link for our client environment. Checksum is provided to validate the download. We will use wget to download a zip file and then unzip to expand it. This installs the kubekettle CLI and the configuration needed for the vSphere plugin that enables SSO authentication. Once that is done, the login command authenticates our user Fred through SSO and updates the local config file with the namespaces Fred has access to. We want to set our context to point to the t-shirt application namespace, so we execute the useContext command to set that. Let's validate that this is a running Kubernetes cluster by creating a couple of deployments. First, we will create a persistent volume. Our persistent volume claim YAML defines a volume that uses our gold disk storage class. Integration with the vSphere container native storage means that a VMDK with a lifecycle independent of any pod or VM has just been created. And we can see that volume bound to the claim. Our MySQL application YAML will reference that persistent volume claim to tell Kubernetes to mount a persistent volume on its pod. Data from that application will now survive a failure of the pod. Now that we have created our database deployment, we will create a Jenkins pipeline with application data persisted in that MySQL database. Now our platform team will use the Kubernetes service that is part of Project Pacific to do an on-demand deployment of a Kubernetes cluster. This will be based on open source Kubernetes image signed and supported by VMware. In just a few minutes, a running cluster is available. Our platform team can see all of the objects they have created, including the managed cluster created through the vSphere Kubernetes service. The operations team has a new expanded view of their inventory, organized by namespace. The Kubernetes managed cluster nodes are organized under a new cluster object with a cluster summary. The MySQL and Jenkins pods were submitted to the supervisor cluster. Pods deployed to the supervisor cluster are instantiated as serverless pods running directly on ESXi hosts. Serverless pods are a new container runtime that provides VM-level isolation and security with the lightweight resource consumption and performance of containers. With Project Pacific, developers can move at their desired velocity while the operations team can provide governance through a more collaborative vSphere platform.
Sorry, that's the demo I have. If people have got any questions or anything which you want to understand, right? So I'll be happy to answer. I will stay over here for some more time. So just to give you guys some overview. So there is end of general support for 6.0 and more details. You can find it over here. And if you need any other details, do let me know. I'll be here for a few more minutes to answer any other questions. Okay.
Sandeep, does SRM support Kubernetes? That's the question.
So not yet, I think pretty soon. So as of now, Kubernetes support is integrated with the SDDC specific products, which is vSphere, NSX, and vSAN. So other products are working on integrating with it. Actually.
So folks, we'll be open for some more time, for a couple of minutes. So if anybody has a question, they can unmute yourself and ask a question. Otherwise, as we said, that we'll be noting down the question in the Q&A window, and we'll start preparing a FAQ document, which you can collect it from your respective tab. So here's the time you want to ask a question, please unmute yourself. I see Gaurav has raised a hand. Gaurav, can you unmute yourself, or do you want me to do that for you?
So let's unmute all and then see if somebody wants to ask a question.
No, let's not unmute all because otherwise it will be.
So do they have an option to unmute themselves?
Or else, if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand in the Zoom. I will unmute you if you have a question. We're open for next couple of minutes. I see somebody has just raised. Vijendra has raised a hand. So I'm just allowing Vijendra to speak. Vijendra,
so my question is related to Kubernetes cluster. So inside a cluster, can we deploy multiple clusters? Because as the answer I get, inside namespace, we can deploy multiple Kubernetes cluster. But as I know, namespace are part of cluster, not.
Yeah, inside a namespace, you can define multiple VMs or containers actually.
Yeah. So, but can I deploy multiple clusters inside one vSphere cluster?
No, that is not recommended actually. So namespace, consider this more like a, as I mentioned, right? Consider this more like a resource pool rather than a separate cluster. So we are pulling the details from that, what do you say? From a specific host and then creating that resource pool.
Okay. Because when we talk about earlier technology, PKS and other things, there it was possible to deploy multiple clusters.
Okay. Okay. So I got your question actually. So let me check and get back on that one. So I understand the analogy which you're trying to do with the PKS part. So there were some limitations even on the PKS also, right? So I will get back on this one. So Nitin, can you note down this question? So Nitin,
yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, so I'm unmuting Santosh now. Santosh, you can ask question.
Santosh?
One second, I'm trying to unmute him, but Nitin, can you unmute Santosh? I am trying, but it's not working from my side.
Let me try.
Mhm.
No, it's not working.
Santosh,
Sorry,
probably you
Santosh.
can.
You can paste your question in a Q&A window and we'll try to get it answered.
We apologize for that, Santosh. Sorry.
So, Sandeep, there was one question. How PKs, what will be the roadmap of PKs with vCF 4.0? Will it be supported or will have to go with embedded Kubernetes?
Sorry, I don't think I'll be able to answer that question. I think someone from PK's team should be able to answer that. Yeah. I really apologize for that.
No worries.
So any questions you guys got with respect to vSphere with Kubernetes, I can definitely be able to help.
Santosh, you can ask your question on the chat window because I am unable to unmute you. I'm really sorry about that.
So let's take some other questions till that time. How will the Kubernetes replica set work alongside vSphere HA to ensure availability of the pods?
Sorry, was the question, how will it work?
Yeah, this for you, Sandeep. How will the Kubernetes replica set work alongside vSphere HA to ensure availability of pods?
I think both are totally different concepts, right? I don't see any similar comparison at all.
Okay.
So the reason why we integrated these aspects of Kubernetes with vSphere is to provide you that native experience the same way how you have been managing your VMs and everything so far. So that was the main goal. And so the analogy which you can draw with VMs in terms of VMs and this containers is, okay, hey, whether the host contains VMs or containers, it doesn't matter. vSphere HA ensures to protect your workloads irrespective of where they are running.
So Sandeep, there's one more thing. So in case if somebody wants to get started with the, vSphere and Kubernetes and he just want to understand, which resource, study resource would you recommend? Which documentation or a channel which you recommend for people to start reading about it?
So this is the starting point.
Okay. So it will be available on 10th of March, right?
It is available already for the customers.
Okay.
So this is the starting point and it has got all the details you need to get started with. And we already published a lot of blog posts and videos also. So where our own TMMs and other leads have put a lot of blog posts and video tutorials how you can start leveraging vSphere with Kubernetes.
Okay. So I think what we'll do is we'll collect all the questions that we have unanswered, and then we'll send it across to you as well as to your team. Maybe you can answer those, and then we can send it to the respective TAMs to forward it to the customers.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to do that. Okay.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Sandeep.
Thank
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thank you all for attending. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.